Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast with David Pollack from ESPN is brought to you by Compassion International. Childhood, as we know, should be full of exploration and learning and growth, but there are so many children in poverty who are often focused simply on living day to day. We're talking about safe water, education, medical care, even safe housing being substandard or in many cases non-existent. And that results in malnutrition, child labor, abuse, and hopelessness. Poverty is such a vicious cycle, but it can be broken. And here's what's happening. Compassion International is doing a great job with over 66 years of experience allowing you and I to release a child from poverty. They found the most effective way to care for children in need is through the local church. It's why they partner with more than 7,000 local churches in 25 countries to deliver God's love and care to children in need, one child at a time. More than 2 million children are breaking the cycle of poverty for good, thanks to Compassion International. Check out the website, compassion.com/sportspectrum. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. Pray about it and consider releasing a child from poverty today. Today in the podcast, we welcome college football analyst David Pollack to the program. David, of course, works with ESPN, but he played a lot of football back in the day. He played his college ball with the Georgia Bulldogs, a three-time first-team All-American, only the second player in Bulldogs team history to earn first-team All-American honors in 3 seasons following Heisman Trophy winner Herschel Walker. He's a 2-time SEC Player of the Year, the 2004 Chuck Bednarik Award winner, among other awards that he won during his college career. And then in 2005, he was selected in the first round of the NFL draft by the Cincinnati Bengals, 17th overall, played his rookie year in 2005. And then September 17th, 2006 happened, a game against the in-state rival Cleveland Browns when Pollack suffered what was later to be determined a broken 6 cervical vertebrae on a first-quarter tackle on Reuben Drones. He suffered no paralysis, but he was taken off the field on a stretcher and underwent surgery to fuse 2 vertebrae, required to wear a halo brace for 3 months. Ultimately, it ended his football career. We talk a lot about that injury here on the podcast. But then David went on to another career, his next venture being broadcasting. And so you've seen David probably on ESPN, does a lot of work on College Gameday and calling college football games and analyzing college football games for ESPN. So lots to talk about here with David, a man of faith, of course, and his foundation, the Pollack Family Foundation, which we talk about too. Lots of good stuff here from David. He is just a passionate person, and you hear that, you sense that when you listen to his answers here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Take a listen to David Pollack here on Sports Spectrum. David, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate you having me, big dog.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you, my friend. And we're taping this. It's the off season. College football still a few months away. Everybody's still itching and scratching for that to come as soon as it can. And I know it's going to come soon. But the College Gameday crew that you're a part of was part of the unique, what I like to call unique presentation of the NFL draft on ESPN this year. And you were a part of that. What was that experience like at the draft, especially it being in Nashville, where it just seemed like it was blowing up and the fans were craving for it? What was that like?
Well, the Nashville component was stupid. It was unreal that that many people were coming out. It looked like Times Square, looked like New Year's Eve. I'm like, is the ball dropping somewhere? Like, what the heck's going on? All these people, I'm talking about 200,000 people a night out there, supporting their team and having a good time. And Nashville's a phenomenal city, and they showed that. But it was really cool, man. Jason, we've covered these guys for at least 3 years, some of them longer, and we know their stories and we know their journeys. And it's really fun to have, on ABC where you can talk about, just for example, Josh Jacobs gets drafted, and we can immediately show the piece on him where dude lived in his car with his 3 other brothers, and show the story behind how he wasn't nationally recruited, and just do some of those stuff. And same thing with Hollywood Brown. What didn't even have a college scholarship out of high school, went JUCO, and show his story, and we had the opportunity to just kind of show stories of guys and get a little bit more in depth instead of this guy fits in this system because it's a great pick because of this. Houston needed this or Atlanta needed this. And so I think it's a good spin what they've done at ABC and changing the way we focus on these kids. And it's a more family and figure out the player you're getting to know as opposed to all about X's and O's and what the kid did on the field.
How much of the prep, I guess, was different from the way you would prepare a college game day broadcast during the fall for you in terms of how you go about this broadcast covering the draft?
Well, I already did it. I mean, I already did my prep for 3 years on these guys. That's the easy part, But I think it's important. Like when Christian Wilkins gets drafted, one of the things I wanted to see was him doing splits. On the podium at the national championship game, him giving Dabo a wet willy, him dressed up with his other guys as Power Rangers for Halloween, like context behind the kid you're getting. So there's not much. It's more about like, hey, let's show Christian Wilkins, awesome side because he's one of the best human beings I've met and has one of the cooler personalities. And so it wasn't as much tape as much as, let's talk about his last several years and what makes him special, what makes him unique, what we can tell the city that's drafting him, what they're getting.
What does your off season outside of the draft look like, David? I know you're a family guy, you're a father. What does that off season look like? Because when you're in season, you're all in. So what does the off season look like for you?
Off season's amazing. It's really cool. I think everybody gets depressed when football leaves, and I think all of us that travel a lot and work a lot are kind of take a deep breath and like, okay, thank you, because we travel so daggone much during the season and during the fall. Dude, I'm a dad. I'm a husband first and a dad, and it's phenomenal. I get to spend so much time with my wife and my kids. I pick my kids up off the bus stop every single day after school. I coach my son in basketball, my baby girl in basketball. I coach my baby girl in softball, and literally, just get to be dad and spend so much time with them. And that's, that was my number one thing growing up was always, what do you want to grow up to be? What do you want to grow up to be? And being a dad was always at the top of my list. I really wanted to have kids. And so our season is busy during the fall and you sacrifice some time, but man, it's such a blessing to recoup some of that time in the off season to be able to spend with them and literally do everything possible with them.
You mentioned wanting to be a dad growing up. Where was football in that lexicon for you as a kid growing up? How you still love football, obviously, but how much was football a part of your life as a child, just wanting to strive and dream to become whatever you wanted to become?
Well, when I was 4, I started my football career, and people asked me, I was 4, and I said, yeah, well, my brother started, he's 2 years older than me. He started when he was 6, and I started on the sidelines at 4. I literally was flying all over the place. I got in trouble because I was tackling cheerleaders. I was hitting everything on the sidelines. So that's when I knew. And then after my first year of tackle football at 6, my parents tell this story all the time. I looked at him, I told them, I'm going to play in the NFL. And just like anything else, as I told that story as I got older and said, hey, guys, I'm going to play in the NFL. And when you're 10 and 11 and you get those pats on the back and you get those good luck, kid, and it was something that I knew at an early age. I thought I was born to do it, Jason. I was built tough and I was built thick and I had a good mentality for the game. So football at a young age, my dad coaching me from 6 years old all the way through, I knew it was always something that would be a huge part of my life.
Growing up in Georgia, I have to imagine faith was a big component in your home too. What was that dynamic like around the dinner table, Sunday mornings, Jesus, God? What was that like as a child?
Well, it's interesting, Jason. We never went to church as a child. We moved down from New Jersey, so I was technically a northerner, but I mean it was brief. It was 2 years. My dad was from up north, and so we moved down to Georgia when I was 2, and never had faith growing up. Our whole life centered around football and basketball and baseball and whatever season it was, and faith wasn't a key component. And I'll never forget. I got invited to a lockout, and I didn't really know what a lockout was. And this was, my junior year of high school, and I was like, what do you do? And they're like, well, it's the church puts it on. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about the church. And and they said, well, you get to play sports all day or all night. And I was like, sold, sign me up, dude, come in, you know. And so I went to this lockout, and I heard about church, and I heard about Jesus, and I heard about the gospel, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. I've never heard about this before. And then that kind of prepared my heart and stirred my heart. And then I had a teacher my junior year of high school. His name was Mark Watson, and I was very good, Jason, and you know me well enough, but I was very good at getting underneath teachers' skins, and I had way too much energy, and I was bouncing off the walls all the time. And man, I tell you what, I couldn't annoy Mark Watson. I just couldn't do it. He had a Jesus sticker on his computer and played praise and worship music and was so chill. And I called him kind of a Jesus freak. And I was like, what's wrong with this dude, man? He's got something about him that's a little different. And I got to know him more and more. And then for English, for outside reading, I chose to do the Bible. Never picked up a Bible in my life. And literally chose to do 200 pages of the Bible. And I went to Mark Watson, my teacher, and I said, hey, man, I don't know a thing about this. Where do I start? And he said, start with the gospel, start with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and told me about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and that there were disciples. And, man, I started to read my Bible in my room at night at my house. And in the quiet, nobody knew I was doing it, and my parents didn't know I was doing it. And I started to read it, and I started to read about this guy that was Jesus, and started to read about his life. And first of all, you get context, and you read about that this was proclaimed for thousands of years, and nobody wanted this to happen. Everybody wanted to shut this down, but he was still able to accomplish these great things and all these lessons, and just it blew my mind and changed my whole attitude. And you know, it coincided. God works in great ways, and it coincided perfectly with my recruitment to college, and Coach Rick takes over at Georgia, and he's exceptionally strong in his faith, and team chaplain at Georgia, and all this worked together for good. But I didn't grow up the typical Southerner that you hear about in church. I grew up, we did our own thing, and then God hit me upside the head with a sledgehammer and showed me what he was about, and showed me his love, and showed me about Jesus. And it was something that took me back and obviously completely changed the direction of my life moving forward.
And yet I know for you, there's still this struggle of identity because you were having such success in college with Georgia and having these great things and achieving these great things. Take us through sort of the mindset of where you were as a newer Christian, but still football sort of being a God in your life.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have that change, and you understand what Jesus did, and you understand what it means to be a Christian. Well, I also had a lot of sin in my life and had a lot of things that I was doing wrong. And I'll never forget going to the lunchroom, and I'm sitting down with all my buddies, and they're all dropping curse words and F-bombs. And by the way, this is what I used to partake in. This is what I used to do with them. And I'm like, hey, man, please don't do that. Don't use your mouth like that. And then 3 minutes later, I'm doing it. And it comes out, and I'm like, oh, crap. Yeah. And you realize, like, just because I believe doesn't make me perfect. And I'm still human, and I'm still going to make a lot of mistakes. And so it was still a process of growing and getting, one of the biggest things for me was getting with our team chaplain and memorizing scripture and putting scripture in my heart to combat everything that comes up and all these temptations. Temptation doesn't go away. Jason, you know that. The older you get, it's still there.
Absolutely.
And guess what? Failure's still going to be a part of my life. And it still is to this day. I still have moments where, whether it's coaching youth league football, where I act like an absolute jerk to a referee. I'm like, dude, who are you? Still have these failures. But it's obviously knowing the bigger truth and knowing what I am and knowing that I'm flawed, but knowing that obviously someone came and took my place and changed that. And I can it's a process, and it takes time. And at Georgia, there was obviously temptations and there was obviously struggles, but it made things so much easier, and it made things stress-free, and it made things, a heck of a lot of fun to do it with my teammates and people around me, and a coach that's Coach Rick that that was rowing the boat in the same direction. And but it didn't make me perfect right away. And I'm not going to sit up here and act like I had everything figured out. It was a process.
I spent time with Coach Rick at ESPN a few times. He came and did the car wash, as I'm sure you know about, when people come through ESPN and do a bunch of interviews. And what a gentle giant in many ways Coach Rick was, just spending time with him and having spoken with him a little bit. Can you tell us a little more about him and the impact that he had on your life in college and certainly since then?
Yeah, it's interesting. The older you get, the more you realize it's not all about winning. Now listen, we live in a culture that will tell you otherwise, and coaches will get fired otherwise. But, I think Coach Rick had a unique perspective of, he really wanted to win, but he knew there was more important things out there, and walked that model, and took us all on team trips to church and played with us, and he understood the bigger picture. And when you have a figure in your life that's a role model to you, or somebody that's leading you, and they're leading you from that position, and that's their strength, and that's what they pull their strength from. It's what you pull your strength. It's no different than any walk of life. Who you hang out with, and who you're around, and who you choose to be who you choose to associate with. It's always annoying, by the way, because your mom always said, you are what you hang with. Well, it's true. I mean, it sucks because you sound like them the older you get when you say stuff like that. But it was very important for me, because I think now that I look back, and like everybody needs people in their life like a Paul. You need a leader. You need somebody that can pour into you. You need somebody that can show you what it looks like. Everybody needs a Timothy. Everybody needs somebody we are pouring into, and we are teaching, and we are helping grow that. And I was Coach Rick's Timothy. He was my Paul. I was somebody that he had gone through these steps in college, and he had messed a lot of the things up, and would share experiences, obviously, that he didn't do right and did do right. And I think everybody, not only that, everybody else needs a Barnabas in their walk too, that they're doing life together with you. You're going through it right now, that, right now it's important for me in my walk and where I'm at to be around parents that are going through, that have kids that are, going through the same stuff. And that we got them in church, and we got them on ball teams that are with the right kind of people, and we're talking to them the right kind of way, and we're praying together, and we're loving on these kids no matter what the situation. So I think it was important for me to have that structure with Coach Rick, of a guy that talked the talk and walked the walk, and showed you that it was more about, it was more important than wins and losses.
David Pollack is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. David, you were selected in the first round, 2005 NFL draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to fast forward, though. Obviously, so many people who know your story know what happened September 17th, 2006. But for those that don't, or maybe have kind of forgotten exactly the extent, can you take us to that moment, kind of where you were in your mindset as a person, as a football player, and then kind of what happened and how it changed you? Well,
it was going into my second year. I moved from defensive end to linebacker my rookie year, and it was a struggle. I didn't perform like I would want to. My second year, man, I was ready to rock and roll. I learned playbooks, and I was ready to go. And in my second game, second play, it was against the Browns. I thought it was a pass. I dropped back a couple steps. It was a draw. I come up, and I hit Reuben Jones with everything I have. And one of my big emphasis, because I didn't tackle in space a lot when I was in college, was I really wanted to get better at tackling in space and hitting people hard and delivering blows. Mm-hmm. Well, I did. And I hit Reuben Jones, really, really hard. And obviously he won the battle. But, it felt like a stinger to me. Anybody who's played football, you get these pains in your back of your shoulder blades in your neck that just everything kind of goes tingly and numb for a little bit. And, that's what I thought it was. And, I hit him and fall down face first, and my legs are kicking, and I know I'm in a lot of pain. I'm like, hey, man, get up. And I couldn't move my arms. And it's like when you fall asleep at night and on your arms, and you wake up and you can't move them, they're asleep. And that's the feeling I had in my arms. And I was like, push up, get up. And it wasn't working. And so it was was a strange feeling. I never had that. And I kind of knew something wasn't right. And they strapped me to the gurney or whatever the thing's called and take me underneath. It's pretty cool. In the NFL, they have x-ray machines right there in the stadium and take me underneath an x-ray and, come out, and I got the family and everybody there. And it's like, hey man, you fractured your C6. And I was like, cool. What's that mean? A couple weeks, couple months, no big deal. And like, well, that means you broke your neck. Like, ooh, okay. I was like, first of all, when we address this, let's say we fractured our C6, because it sounds a heck of a lot better than a broken neck. A broken neck sounds really bad. So I'll never forget, them wheeling me to the back of the ambulance, and never forget my wife was in the back with me, and never forget crying and going, there is a good chance this is the last time that I step. I have this uniform on, this cleats on, and I play football. And already, it's a realistic chance, because you know what that means when you break your neck and what it could mean for your future. And so there was tears. And, again, we just talked about this a little while ago, Jason. I dreamed about this since I was 6 years old. Yeah. I thought I was put on this earth to play football. I mean, I would have told you that a million times out of a million times, like every part of me. And so this is like, oh, wait, this is a big obstacle. This is a big hurdle. And, I started to get feeling back in my arms over the next couple of days. And then I got put in the halo for, the next 4 months, and then a neck brace, and then I had to have surgery. And it was a long couple years of rehab. I'll never forget too, when I bet 455 when I was in college, and I got cleared to work out a couple years later after breaking my neck, and I did 135 twice, and my arms were shaking uncontrollably. I mean, it was, you talk about humbling, and it's an example I use right now with a lot of my friends. I'm like, listen, guys, it don't matter where you've been. Like, it doesn't matter what you used to do. Like, that's gone. Let's dominate today. And that was really my mindset. I was like, dude, I'm gonna give everything. I'm gonna make every day count. I'm gonna make it count right now, and I'm gonna do the best I can and work as hard as I can. And so, listen, this is me as my dreams are literally ripped away from what I thought I was going to be and what I thought I was going to do, to having, several months and a couple years of rehab to get my body back to even close to what it used to be. And so it was humbling. It was scary at times. And now when I'm, as a 36-year-old, I can look back and say it was the best time of my life.
Why is that? Why do you call it the best time of your life? So many people hearing, wait a minute now, David, your dream just got crushed and you suffered a terrible injury. How is that the best time of your life?
Because you don't know. I didn't know a lot about myself, and I didn't know a lot about, it's easy to talk the talk, Jason. I mean, it's very easy for somebody to say, you need to do this, you need to do that. But, it's a little bit more difficult to walk the walk. And, God presented me something totally different than I ever would have imagined. But, man, you talk about finding out who you are, and everybody wants to succeed, and everybody wants to have great things happen to them in life. And I'm no different, but I don't know about y'all. I don't really learn about myself until I figure out some of these dark times, and until I've met on with some adversity to see how I'm going to handle it. And to know that, I can do this. I can be strong, and God's got my path taken care of. And Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 has been my life verse for a long time. And it is no different. This was no different. This was, hey, God, you got this. I ain't worried about it. I'm not going to sit here and whine. I'm not going to sit here and complain. I'm going to literally sit back and let you drive. You find a lot about who's in your life for the right reasons. I'm a newly married guy moving to Ohio, and, with all these dreams and aspirations. My wife is literally taking care of me day and night. Like, I got to see what kind of woman I had next to me. That was powerful for me. I got to see what kind of friends were in my life for the right reasons. I got to learn, what kind of person I was. If I was a person that when things got really, really tough, if I was a person that was going to keep my faith and stay strong. And, God blessed me so much with, like, now I can look back and go, man, like, I needed that, because I was a cocky punk that had the world figured out, that just accomplished my dreams and was going to make millions of dollars and told my wife we're not going to Hawaii until we go for Pro Bowls and want to win Super Bowls and do all this stuff. And God was like, all right, well, what about now? You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, the Bible is obviously littered with examples, and Job to me is the greatest one. You talk about somebody that had everything and loses, you know, everything. Well, how are you going to respond? You know, I think everybody out there knows that anybody who's been through troubling times knows that more times are coming. And if we can tell ourselves that God, like the end's taken care of, what can I control now? I can put my faith in Him. I can put one foot in front of the other, and I can know the result's going to be taken care of. I don't have to stress. I don't have to worry. And I'm going to let the chips fall where they fall.
And now when people introduce you, it's less about former NFL player or even former Georgia player, although I'm sure that comes up. It's even more now college football analyst at ESPN. So this broadcasting thing begins to take off for you. How was that for you, adjusting to the broadcast world, knowing you weren't playing anymore and realizing that this might be something that you're pretty good at?
First of all, Jason, let's be clear. I hated the media at times. And if you had told me that I was going to be part of the quote unquote media, I'd have slapped you upside your head. I mean, I would have never in a million years, I'd have been like, you lost your mind. Cause, you know, it's just like anything else. There are people that really annoy you because they don't really listen and they don't take into account exactly what you're going through, and they say things that aren't true. And so you kind of get annoyed. But man, I'm sitting in my house in 2007, Jason, and I'm rehabbing still, and I'm trying to get my health part of my life back together and figure out what I'm going to do. And football might be an option. It might not. And I'm watching the college football because I couldn't sleep. I had a halo and a neck brace. And it was just not a time where there was a lot of sleep. And I'm watching college football. And this is the year that Georgia's in the race to be, you know, go to the national championship. But you got guys on TV that are saying, you know, you got to win your conference championship. And, you know, I knew some of these guys, and I was texting them back and forth, yelling at them. And I'm like, come on, man. And I used to watch Mike and Mike in the morning, every morning in my halo and in my neck brace. And I told my agent, I was like, hey, man, if I can't do this football stuff, you know, this stuff is kind of cool. This stuff's, you know, I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I'm opinionated. Like, it seems like I have all the prerequisite skills to be successful at this. And so, you know, I found out, you know, months later and years later that after I'm rehabbing that I can't play. And I told my agent, I'm like, listen, what about doing some radio? You know, these Mike and Mike guys are really fun and really cool, and you get to talk sports. And sports, you know, in some capacity, I knew football would still be a part of my life. And so I got on with this radio station in Atlanta. I came in and did a sit-in for a couple hours. They offered me the job, and it was 790 The Zone in Atlanta. And we fly back from Ohio and take the job and live in Atlanta and start my broadcasting career in radio. And boy, to say it was a struggle was the least of it, man. I mean, you're talking about, I'm a defensive player, first of all, and I can just tell you from being at home, we're not the smartest. I mean, we're not, bro. I mean, you could spin it however you want, and to be able to have to articulate on radio what you're going to say, you can't smile, you can't push somebody, you can't use body language. And I'm telling you what, if you heard some of the reads I did for some of the commercials, Lord have mercy, I should have been fired on the spot. I mean, it was atrocious. And I'll never forget when I do work my way up. I'm working at ESPNU, and we're doing recaps from 12 a.m. to 2 in the morning, Jason.
Oh, yeah.
Ain't a dang person I know watching, by the way. My mama couldn't even stay up to watch, so I know nobody else is watching. And I'm literally I was making a little over $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So let's take that back. You're a first-round pick in the NFL making gazillions of dollars, you know, living your dreams. And now let's go make $1,000 a month, work from 12 to 2 a.m. doing something that nobody really watches. I mean, it's another moment in your life where now when you're at home and you're grinding, like I literally sat there and I go, okay, you're a freshman in college. What are your goals? What are your dreams? Where do you want to be? It doesn't happen right now overnight. Like, you're going to have to grind and you're going to have to work just like you did if you want to get somewhere again. And, you know, I have those talks with myself a lot. Like, okay, like I'm one of those person that if you don't make the dog bark inside, I feel like it'll die. And so whether that's physically, spiritually, mentally, whatever. I always have challenges almost daily, and just to make sure that I'm competing and make sure I'm fighting. And this was a time for me that I had to fight and learn and grow. And I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that College Gameday was where I wanted to be. That's what I said when I met with my first time I sat down with an agent. I was like, hey, man, he was like, what do you want to do in this? I was like, College Gameday would be really cool. He was like, that's great, dude. So does everybody else on the planet. Yeah. You know, everybody wants to do that does broadcasting. I'm like, well, you know, that's what I'd like to do. He's like, okay, whatever, you know, and then you go to ESPNU for a couple hours from 12 to 2 a.m. But it was a strange set of circumstances of how I got into the business. It was definitely nothing that I said growing up or in college that I'm like, I want to do that.
Do you remember the first time you ended up on Mike and Mike after having watched them and thought, maybe I could do that someday? And then one day you were a guest on that show?
Yeah, it was years and years and years and years later. And then I told those guys, you know, the story of me watching them almost every morning and them inspiring me to think this is something that I could be passionate about because they had fun.
Yeah.
And that's my mission, man. I'm not going to preach to you about the game of football and uncover these nuggets that are just precious gold. You know, like I'm going to study harder than everybody I know, and I'm going to watch a bunch of tape. But man, I'm going to sit up there and just give it to you straight. And guess what, Jason? Sometimes you're going to love me.
Yep.
And sometimes you're going to hate me, because the bottom line is if you pick against somebody's team, they don't like you. I mean, you can say the nicest things in the history of the world. If they didn't hear it, all they heard was, I picked X and you didn't pick Y. Yeah. And so I think, you know, from that standpoint, it was, it's always been fun. It's always been enjoyable to do, but you know, it's something that you quickly learn. You can't please everybody, and it's going to be tough, and just have fun. That's going to be my style, is shoot people straight and have fun. And sometimes you're going to love me, sometimes you're going to hate me.
Last couple questions here with David Pollack on the podcast. I want to ask you about now. You work with such a great group of people, and I know Reese and Maria Taylor, who was on this podcast, are believers, and I know you got a great culture there and a great team dynamic there. But bring me into how you live out your faith as a broadcaster. And obviously you can't go on College Gameday and start preaching the gospel. And sometimes maybe you can in weird ways, but tell me about how you live your faith out every day in the job that you have at ESPN.
It's funny you say you can't, you know, preach the gospel. I think our body of work and who we are and how we carry ourselves preaches the gospel.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That is a living, walking, like way more in this world will ever be, or way more will be caught than taught. And you know, no matter how you shake it out, like what you say, how you treat people, you know, do you love people? Do you love people that are unlovable? Like it's so, I can get everybody in the world to love people to people that do something for them and that they benefit from them greatly. Everybody loves those people, but can you love people that are difficult? And, you know, my life, I have Reese, I have Maria, I have Kirk, I have Dez, I have Coach, and all these guys, we all work together, and we all come from different backgrounds, and we all have different things that are very, very important to us, but we all know exactly where we stand. And we have a text feed of a lot of the guys that you would know on ESPN, of even throwing in not just game day people, but Marty Smith and Dave Pash and you know, Chris Spielman. And we have a text feed, and it's called, I named it God Feed a couple of years ago, and we text inspiring things back and forth, and we text when we need prayers. And so you have a support team, but you know, more importantly, faith doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the most articulate person in the room and be able to share these amazing things. You know what? You're a leader when you have influence over one person. One person. And that one person you can take and you can lead and you can show an example of what Christ is, and that you love people. And the biggest thing for me and my walk with my friends and stuff too is surround yourself with people that are real. Surround yourself with people that will tell you, hey man, you messed up, or hey man, would you think about this, or maybe you should think about that, because you don't want a bunch of people in your life that don't have the best interest for you and your family and your kids and your wife and your marriage. I mean, that's one thing I've learned, Jason, that's even the most important is hanging out with people that are cheering for my marriage.
Yeah.
Not people that are, hey, let's be the fun group. Let's go over here. How about somebody that, I mean, I legit, I want to be that person to other people too. I remember I had a buddy that cursed at his wife a couple of years ago, and I just pulled him off to the side and I said, listen, man, I'm not going to be around that. That's not something I want to see, hear, be around. That's not how you treat a woman. That's not how you treat your bride, your most important person in this world, on this earth to you. Mm-hmm. And, I want people like that. And we have them at ESPN, which is awesome. But you got to find those people that have, and it's funny, I was talking to my kids in the car on the ride to baseball the other night. And I just told them, I said, hey guys, they were talking about, I was like, what do y'all want to do because our school ends in the South. Our school ends on Friday, tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And we start our summer, which is amazing. And I said, I said, let's have a spend the night party, after school gets out. We can have a bunch of people over. Who you want to have over? And my son said a name and my daughter said a name. And I was like, well, who else? And they said somebody else. And I said, here's what I want you guys to realize. When you say these names and you hang out with these people, everything about y'all's relationship should be easy. It should be fun. It's not about who's cool or who can make smart aleck comments or who can do X, who's good at this. I'm like, when you hang out with people, it should be very easy. It shouldn't be people that calls you names. It should be people that love you. It should be people that you don't argue with, you don't fight with, people that you always cheer for. That you want them to do good, they want you to do good, but just they're not making life hard on you if you beat each other or you're going at each other's throats. And so it's just a cool example of a way to kind of relate to them and tell them. And I would tell them that, I messed up in avenues and I didn't hang out with the best people. And sometimes I got in trouble because I didn't. But, that's the gospel. That's what Jesus did. Jesus hung out with everybody and loved people after people after people that kept coming to him. And, that's what my biggest focuses have been is show it, be about it, walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. And I think we all have people in our life that we need to reach out to and that we need to be closer to. When you're around somebody and you go, that guy's got something different. Yeah. I think that's the people that I would encourage people to hang out with and spend time with, because your life will be more successful. Everything about your life will become easier.
Last two questions here with David Pollack, and you talk about walking the walk. One thing that you do so well is give back, and you have the Pollack Family Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about the foundation and what it entails and kind of why you started it?
Man, we had our golf tournament this past Friday, and it was such a blessing because for us, we knocked it out of the park and had the most success we've ever had, and had a bunch of companies jump on board that supported us, and a bunch of companies like Dick's Sporting Goods every year that supports us. And, here's the thing we've learned. So, I broke my neck and couldn't play anymore. And, part of my journey became too is, okay, I don't need that weight anymore. And I was 275 at the lightest. I was 292 at my heaviest, in my college and pro career. And, when I came back, I started realizing, it became important to me about nutrition and health. And I started realizing that, knowledge is power, and people don't have the knowledge, and people don't understand what sugars do and what carbs do and what fats do. And so we started to see it in our baseball teams. And I'm sure you've seen this, Jason, your little league teams, and they bring crap for post-game snacks. It's just garbage. It's candy. It's trash. And, we started to bring beef jerky, and the kids were just as happy, and they were just as smiley, and they had just as much fun. It didn't change anything, but we started to implement healthy habits. And my wife's a personal trainer, and along our journey, we've just read a lot and learned a lot about health. And, one of the things we've seen is, if we can educate families and help them learn some strategies to fun and some strategies to being active. And so like last year, we built a park, here in Georgia. This year, we're going to build, 3 or 4 more playgrounds and parks and areas where we can get people involved. We do a camp every year with Strong for Life and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, where kids with an 85 percentile BMI or higher body mass index or higher come to this camp for a week, and we educate them. We educate their parents on eating right and what it does to your body, and then we take them and we do awesome fun physical things. Riding bikes. They learn to ride bikes, and they learn to canoe and zip line, and we take them on all these different things to show them, like, man, we can do this. This is awesome. This is active. And so that's another thing we do. But we do a lot of good stuff, but it was just created to help families. You know what I figured out, Jason, is when you're not happy with yourself, it's hard to have a good life. People that get down on themselves, they're not happy. They're miserable. You're a bad dad, and you're a bad husband sometimes. And I found when we can help them achieve their goals and get them happier about themselves, they become better fathers, and they become better sons and better husbands. And so that's kind of our goal with the Pollack Family Foundation, is to keep people moving and provide opportunities for that and educate them on health and nutrition.
That's great. The website's pollackfamilyfoundation.com, pollackfamilyfoundation.com. Last question, David, and thanks so much for your time. You've been so generous with it. What are you learning from the Lord in the season of life that he has you right now? This is a question that we ask all of our guests here as we close the podcast. What is God teaching you right now in your life?
I think for me, where I'm at, I tend to have had some times in the past, and still do. I'm still struggling with it now. Is just accepting people for who they are and for what they are, and not being the person that thinks that they know best. I've spent a lot of my life looking at a situation and immediately criticizing and immediately going, why would they do that? That doesn't make sense. I don't know their life. I'm not walking in their shoes. To me, being a judgmental human being is something that God's really been working on, is just meeting people where they're at, loving on them, giving more and being more a part of giving time and money. And, I want to be more involved in the process of helping people, not looking for something in return, but just pouring into people and loving on them. And I have a long way to go, but I find myself a lot of times to this day, why would somebody do that? Man, shut up. Don't worry about why somebody would do that. That's their life. You know what? I'm going to come alongside those people and love them. And if they think that's what's best for their family, I'm going to love them regardless. And it doesn't matter to me what they choose. And so I think for me, it's going to be that, is being less judgmental, being more loving, and finding more opportunities of people that need help, and giving your time and giving your resources to people that need it.
He is David Pollack, the ESPN college football analyst, former All-American at the University of Georgia and first-round pick with the Cincinnati Bengals. David, thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciated this, and I've been hoping to do this for a while, so I'm glad we were able to get it done, and just wish you nothing but the best, my friend. Keep going.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for all you do, man. This is really cool.
Many thanks to David Pollack for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Give him a follow over on Twitter if you're not already following him. David Pollack 47 is his handle, at David Pollack 47. Again, when you follow David Pollack, when you know David Pollack, this dude is just full of energy, full of positivity. Make every day count is kind of his motto. And again, the foundation website is pollackfamilyfoundation.com, pollackfamilyfoundation.com. Dave's the real deal. He's the real deal, and I loved having him on the podcast and appreciate his authenticity and his faith being a priority in his life. So many thanks to David for being here on Sports Spectrum. And we also want to thank our partners, our sponsors, Compassion International. They do it right by allowing you and I an opportunity to release a child from poverty. For more information, go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum. Search the website, check out the list of children that are waiting to be released from poverty, pray about it, and then consider sponsoring them for just $38 a month. Go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum, sponsor a child today. Many thanks to you for listening. You can reach us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at sports_spectrum. And certainly if this is the first time you've ever listened to the Sports Spectrum podcast, welcome to the program. We're so grateful to have you checking out this interview. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button on the podcast app that you're listening to this program on. Never miss an episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. We've had tons and tons of interviews here, and David and certainly his colleagues, Maria Taylor has been on this podcast. Dave Pasch from ESPN has been on this podcast. People who work in the college football world. So many great men and women of faith that love sports, that work in sports, that are athletes, coaches, former athletes, whatever the case may be. We're just so pleased, so proud, so grateful and privileged to be able to share these stories with you here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. So hit that subscribe button and then go over to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's where all of our content can be found, day-to-day, daily devotionals every single morning, 6 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, plus articles on the intersection of sports and faith all day long. Curated articles and created articles from the Sports Spectrum family. Check it out, sportspectrum.com. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time with a brand new episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. Have a great rest of your day.